Okay, welcome everyone. We will call to order our regular meeting of council. And we will start by recognizing that we're meeting today on the unceded traditional territories of the Sachot and Hupachesset First Nations. Before we start today, I do just want to recognize at our first official regular meeting of council that we do have our new CAO, Mike Fox, in his role today. We did undergo a CAO search, and we're really happy to have Mike as our selected candidate. I know council has had a bit of time getting used to working with Mike already, and as had staff, he's been in the role for about a week and a half, probably, something like that, and has just come into it really well, and we're really excited to have you in this role and to have the opportunity to work with you. Mike, I'll just pass it over to you if you want to just introduce yourself a little bit so that the community knows who you are and where you've come from.
Sure. Thank you. And through the chair, I just want to thank the community for such a warm welcome over the past few weeks. It's been great getting out there and getting to see everybody. At the local hockey game, I think I met half the community almost. It was quite a fun time, great energy in the arena. And also, me and my wife, we went to several concerts here in the community, and it's just been welcoming all the way around. So I just really want to thank the community for that. I come from several different provinces of have experience, most recently the city of Lethbridge, and I've been in municipal governance in a management role for about just over 20 years. So I'm really looking forward to starting here. It's such a wonderful council and administration, and it's great to be here. And I look forward to getting started on council's new strategic plan and fulfilling the community's needs. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we do have an agenda in front of us. I know we have a couple of late items from the corporate officer that I'll get to next, but do we have any late items from council? Okay, seeing no late items from council. Danielle, would you mind just highlighting the late items?
Absolutely. Thank you, Madam Mayor. So we have two items of correspondence. The first one is from our TASO regarding City of Port Alberni paid parking in commercial zones. Just a request for council's consideration on implementing that within the city. And the second piece is a petition received from residents of 6th Avenue regarding defer funding for street repairs that's coming forward on the agenda later today.
Okay, thank you very much. Would somebody like to move approval of our agenda with the amendments? Moved by Councillor Patola, seconded by Councillor Solda. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, thank you. And on to minutes, we have the minutes from the special meeting held at 9:30 a.m. and the regular meeting of council held at 2 p.m. on March 13th, 2023. So moved to adopt by Councillor Solda, seconded by Councillor Patola. Any comments on the minutes? Seeing none, on the motion, all in favor? Any opposed? None opposed, carried. So we'll move on to public input period. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address council on topics of relevance to City Council. Would any members of the public like to speak today? Okay, come on forward. And if you don't mind just stating your name for the record when you come to the podium.
Can you hear me? First, I'll read the petition. We, the undersigned residents of 6th Avenue between Melrose and Bruce Streets in the city of Port Alberni, petition the city to follow through with its plan to separate storm and sewer drains on our block, consistent with upgrades to surrounding streets. The roadways and sidewalks on this block are in an advanced state of disrepair, presenting a safety hazard as well as a flood threat to residents. Now, I highly recommend the act of petitioning because it allows you to introduce yourself to your neighbors, and it also allows you an insight into the history of a circumstance which extends over a period of 50 years. 6th Avenue between Melrose and Bruce tells its own story, and you can look at the road. It's just 4 blocks away, 10 minutes to get there on foot, and you can see that the road has buckled and it's cracked, and that the sidewalks have disintegrated and cracked. There's more waves in the sidewalk than there are in Alberni Inlet. And this is not recent. This has been going on, the earliest resident I could find was been there since 1975, the year I graduated, before I graduated from high school. And she says she has not seen the city attend to the problems since she's been there. The problem, it's not the city's fault necessarily, but the city needs to be aware of this, is groundwater. And that's what the street's telling us. It's saying, Port Alberni, you have a groundwater problem. And Tom can attest to this because when he arrived 39 years ago, he did some quick research with Dye and found that the water bubbling up in his yard actually originated way up the mountainside. He went as far as Anderson, I think, and within days he had the dye percolating up in his yard. It's actually now, some of the groundwater nearby is running into the street. We don't know whether it's hazardous or not. We're going to see if the public health unit will do some sampling. But that's not the primary issue. The primary issue is we live in an era of climate change, and it's delivering more and more water to us, precipitation-wise, in shorter time spans. And we see out here today, it's a beautiful day, but the barometer is trending towards dry. Well, it's springtime, and we haven't seen significant rain yet. So it's coming, but it's coming at less frequent intervals in greater quantities. And when Mike got back to me with some of the engineering feedback, they mentioned that they hadn't had a flooding incidents as a result of this situation since 2015. And I want to say that's entirely due to the people I call the 6th Avenue Guardians. And we are out there on winter nights when it's stormy, guarding the safety of the homes because the water will back up within minutes. And in December, the sewage began to, the stormwater rather, began to bubble up out of the drain. The drain is immediately above my house, and it's the size of a pizza box. And this has to drain an area roughly equivalent to an airport runway, and it's insufficient. So to follow through and delay this remedial project, we feel makes no economic sense because it exposes the taxpayers of all Port Alberni to possibility of unnecessary financial risk and harm. Because the settlement, if we are flooded with possibly contaminated stormwater, would be run into the millions.
Thank you, Mike. We are at the time limit for
Okay.
public input period today at the 3 minute or just past the 3 minute mark. And this is not a piece of the agenda where
Yes.
we'll do questions and answers. However, we are receiving it as correspondence later in the agenda. So if council has questions,
Can I just
we'll
wrap
be
up?
able to ask them then.
Okay.
Yeah.
There is a ready solution and there is ready funding from the federal and provincial governments for aging infrastructure and for climate change adaptation. And I suggest you tap into that if you don't have the resources on hand to deal with this problem. Because as I say, the people on this street feel like they've been betrayed, been left to languish in this city's neglect for 50 years, now to be told that it's not going to be done at any time
Thank
in the
you,
near
Mike.
future. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Are there other members of the community who would like to speak at public input today? Come on forward.
Hi, my name is Joseph Laskosic, and address, I won't give it, Port Alberni. I just want to make an apology. Last time I was here, I spoke at the Committee of the Whole meeting, and I mentioned something about cost for removal of potentially harmful trees that are causing issues. And I made the mistake of saying Willa Thorpe. I had gotten some information from her. It wasn't Willa, and I mentioned retirement, and it wasn't Willa, it was Twyla. And who was a corporate officer. And so I just want to apologize to both people for making that mistake and saying Willa, I thought had retired. And I looked up my emails, and it was Willa email that I was communicating with. It was Twyla that I had spoken with. So I want to apologize to both people for making that mistake. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Would any other members of the public like to speak at public input today? Okay, not seeing any. We will move on then to delegations. We have one delegation today, and we have Don Jones, Director of the Rotary Club of Port Alberni. Thank you. So for our delegations, we allow up to 10 minutes and then time for questions and answers after.
It won't be that long. Excuse me. Mayor and Council, the Rotary Club of Port Alberni is organizing again this year a community cleanup day to be held from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. on Saturday, April 22nd, 2023, which happens to coincide with Earth Day, which falls on that day. 8 to 10 community groups will participate in our project, with each group being assigned an area in Port Alberni to pick up trash and recyclables. Litter would be dropped off in a dumpster provided by Nicklin Waste Management, which will be situated in the Scotiabank parking lot at 10th and Redford. When our litter day finishes at 2 p.m., Nicklin Waste Management will be taking the litter to the Alberni Valley landfill. And we already have a tipping fee waiver permission from the ACRD. Our Rotary Club will be promoting the event on social media. Also, we will take before and after pictures of excessively littered areas, post them to social media after the event to raise awareness of the need to not litter our environment. Any recyclables will be redeemed to cover event costs, with any excess funds being donated to local community organizations. So far, in the past 2 years, that hasn't happened. We've made nothing on recyclables. We respectively ask the City of Port Alberni permission for us to proceed with this community cleanup day, and would greatly appreciate the City of Port Alberni donating litter grabbers, reflective safety vests, barricades, and metal sign stands for our event. We also request to be a delegation today, and obviously it has happened. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from council? Councillor Douglas.
Thanks very much for doing this. Thanks to you and the Rotarians. I just wanted to be clear about the reception of the litter is 10th and Redford.
Okay, we are getting a big box from Nicklin, which will be stationed in the parking lot near the corner of 10th and Redford.
Right.
And the reason we need the barricades is to sort of draw out a line of entrance so that we're not inhibiting traffic flow.
And participants who want to take part then would get a hold of your group?
They get a hold of Dwayne Parfit, and his phone number is 250-731. Oh boy.
Yeah.
Well, it's advertised. It is advertised. His email, I used to know Dwayne's number up by heart, but I think because I'm here today, I forgot it. His email is dwayneparfit48@gmail.com.
Okay.
So what we'll be doing, we've got about 5 or 6 groups signed up who are coming already. A lot of them are repeaters. Some of them take on very big areas. There's one group that goes from Success at Semaeus Elementary all the way up to Batty Road. And they do it as about 10 or 12 people. They do it as a family project. And we're sticking mainly to the main thoroughfare areas where there tends to be more litter, and also it's more visible to the public.
Thank you.
But anybody who wants to come and do some, 10 to 2 on the 22nd of April. We're not encouraging people to bring their own garbage. This has got to be litter from the streets.
Yeah, and Mayor, what I was going to suggest is in the past years, prior to COVID, we did this and we had a city management team that took part, and they selected a route they were going to do. The city QP group selected a route, and I'd be happy to spearhead a city council group, should anybody be so inclined. And then we'll get a hold of Mr. Parfit, that private phone number you provided.
Well, it's not private. It's a cell phone.
I was joking. Yeah. Okay. Thanks. Okay. Thanks very much for what you're doing.
Thank you very much, Councillor Douglas, for the questions.
Thank you. Councillor Solda, did you have a comment? Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. 731-6555.
6555, thanks,
That
Charles.
sounds about right for Mr. Parfit, so
Yes.
there we go. 250-731-6555. Call and be part of this. Thank you for coming, Mr.
All
Jones.
I could think
We
was
support you.
7155, and I knew that wasn't right.
Thank you. Councillor Solda.
Madam Mayor, I'll be glad to move. I know we don't make motions during a speaker, but I'm going to do this one. I'll move that the City of Port Alberni gives permission for the Rotary Club to proceed with the Community Cleanup Day and by donating for use the litter grabbers, reflective safety vests, barricades, and metal sign stands for their event. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Moved and seconded. And I just wanted to note that this is in keeping with what we have done in the past to support this event. So I think it's simple for us to just make that motion now rather than asking for more information. Any further comments? Councillor Solda.
And any gloves that they need to, Madam Mayor, in that. So everything.
Friendly
Great,
amendments.
thank you. Yes.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no further comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you very
so
much.
much for coming forward, and thanks to your group for the work that you do. Okay, we'll move on to unfinished business. Item number 1, we have the 5-year financial plan, 2023 to 2027, bylaw number 5075 amendment. I assume we will hear from our Director of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So today we have a report in front of council with some budget amendments. Most of these are with capital. These are some items that have been on the capital work in progress for a number of years, or are projects that are no longer identified as required at this time. So we are resetting the priorities within the work in progress, trying to come up with the new plans for the financial plan as far as what we are looking for into the future. So with this, there's a number of capital items here, and I could go through those if council would like to kind of get an overview of each one, or I could allow council to provide feedback on any line item that they so choose. Additional to that, there is another item that we'd like to add. That was an item that was not included in the original capital plan that was presented to council, but it was work that was done on our road networking survey and identified 2 intersections that council is aware of on Dunbar and 10th and 10th and Redford, which was in the plan. But this includes a much larger scope of work for a total of $410,000. And with the changes in the capital plan and the money freed up to do this work within the current year, we're asking that council support the recommendation to add this into the capital plan for 2023. Council may choose to do any other amendments, any other recommendations, but before we provide second reading, which is also in the report to council to have today, if council agrees, is to provide second reading after we make any amendments. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Would council like to go through each of the suggested changes? Or just pick out questions where they're applicable? Councillor Solda.
Madam Mayor, I think for the public-wise, they don't have this paper in front of them. It might be something we should do so the public understands what the changes are. You can go fast.
Okay, not saying disagreement. So Director of Finance, if you don't mind just maybe highlighting each of the changes then for the list.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor. So with the first one, it's the GIS projects. We currently have 2 in the work in progress. We'd like to consolidate those into one project number. That's just combining and putting those into one. That's the item number 1. Administration also, the asset management implementation. A couple of years ago, we had a project identified to use a contract service to enable asset management to progress, but we've since changed that and are looking at a staff resource in the current year's financial plan so we can relinquish these funds and move these back into the reserve to which they came from. With the other one, number 3, paving, that's Harbor Road to Argyle to Dunbar. So this is something that we've had done some work, some consulting work for this project. With that, there is some funds that are left over, and identifying the work that needs to be done for the Connect the Keys project. That can be done at the same time, so we'd expense those funds they're undertaking, the work that was done earlier, and then move forward with those funds going back to the reserve. Paving on 6th Avenue to Melrose to Bruce, this is a project from 2018. Currently, we've done work in the area for the combined sewer overflows, which highlighted the need for the other areas in town to reduce the CSOs in those areas. So that's why this is brought forward, and we've looked at Wallace Street and Argyle Street as far as the other areas that we're seeing the combined sewer overflows that we need to shift and start to reduce in these areas to get our CSOs down. With that, we ask to relinquish those funds and use it for other projects that are in the listing. Paving for the rail crossing, Strathern and Dunbar, that is another item where we've done some repair work actually on Latham to repair some of the rail areas there. And with the work that's going to be done on the SOMAS lands, it's identified to relinquish these funds and do any work at that time as we see redevelopment on that property. With paving on 15th and Montrose to Bruce, we did a water main project in that area. There's a center strip that was paved, and we anticipated doing additional paving at that same time. But that window passed. We do anticipate other developments in the area that could be done at the same time, so that's why engineering has asked to relinquish these funds, and we use these funds in the future with a development in that area. Storm 6, and I should note that it should be Bruce, not Argyle Street in that one there, so just a minor amendment to the resolution that is in front of council, so sorry about that. But what we are doing, just as I mentioned earlier, is we're looking at other CSO projects in the community to reduce the CSOs. So that was being relinquished back to the reserve. With cultural services, there's some housekeeping here with McLean Mill projects. So we have projects that are identified every year in the historical side of the property. With that, if we combine it into one project number, it just streamlines the presentation. Also allows for just easier financial accounting tracking. The cultural services reallocate the McLean's Mill underground storage tank. This is $30,000 as identified, but the work doesn't need to be required. There's more focus on the septic at the site, so we're asking that council move that from the underground storage tank to the septic field upgrades. Parks, combine all the facility projects that are outstanding in the 5 listed project numbers there into one, and then carry that forward for a total of just under $140,000. So it's not asking for any amendments, but it's just cleaning up the projects so they're all wrapped up under one project number. Sewer, 6th Avenue to Melrose and Bruce. This is another one that was identified as far as shifting priorities for CSO reduction in the community. Small capital main replacements. The next one is a request from council going back to when we did the Argyle Force Main. We were trying to come up with funding to support that project. That project is still being wrapped up, but with that, the funding identified at that time could be relinquished back to the funds to which it came from, which is the sewer fund in this case. So we're asking council to move that back to the sewer fund for other sewer projects in the community. With the Harbor Road trunk sewer replacement, there's some actual maintenance work that was done on this item, or this asset. And what happened is that after that maintenance work was undertaken, the requirement to do the works was not present anymore. So engineering is asking to no longer do that project because it's functioning correctly, and move that back to the reserves. With the water, noted in the work in progress, we've seen this project sitting there as though we had to continue some work, but actually we've moved on to phase 6 now. So phase 4 is complete, and we do have the award for that tender coming to council at the next meeting for most likely early approval for us to go out and complete that work. And we don't need the money that's assigned to that water main at this time. So we're just asking that to go back to the water fund. There's some projects that are done in the old high school area. So with that, there's been funds set aside to finish up the paving. We're just asking to consolidate all that funding that we had in the next line item, and that's totaling $370,000, which will be done as those developments are completed and remain as a project in the financial plan. So with the pause project also, the replacement of the Jordan air compressor, this unit is currently functioning. It's within the IRF. Every year, the fire department will review to see if they need to purchase a new one, but at this time, it's extended another year, and we'll update the cost of that unit. Obviously, there might be some cost escalation, but this unit is working fine, so we'll just relinquish those funds if council agrees. And then review the approach with the water meter replacement program. That was something that we had planned over 6 years. We are relooking at that project. With that, we would like to capitalize all the projects all the water meters that are complete within that project every year. With that, we will close the other projects that are currently outstanding, assign $300,000 if council concurs into the water meter projects for 2023 and capitalize at the end of the year and close that off. I do know that the Director of Engineering is working on our staff report for this one line item, and we do imagine that coming before the end of the financial plan being approved. And then, of course, I mentioned the other amendment that I presented is the work on 10th Avenue for both Redford intersection and Dunbar intersection, and those are the staff recommendations for amendment to the financial plan.
Thank you very much to the Director of Finance for all the information on those projects and some of the decision that went into the recommendations. Are there questions from council? Councillor Haggard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Andrew, there's a pause project, electronic filing system records management for $53,000. And I thought that conversion to electronic filing system was a high priority of staff, so I'm wondering why that project is being paused.
Madam Mayor, sorry I missed that one when I was trying to go through the list. But with that, I think when we look at the scope of what's required to undertake that, the funding that was identified, that was back in 2019, it probably needs to be expanded. So I think that's something that council needs to see as far as a recommendation, but that would be supported with a staff report, and Director of Corporate Services could expand on that if needed, but I think that was the intent with that one.
Thank you. And so at this time, those funds would just go back into the reserve. They're not being spent on something else, rather just move back to the reserve because the project scope is not adequate at this point or defined.
That's correct.
Thank you. Okay, other questions? Okay. Would somebody like to read this motion? And I think given that we have just gone through the whole thing, it would be okay to just move A as written, including all of the components. Councillor Mealy.
So move, Madam Mayor. No,
you.
do you just want to do A first, or do you want to do A?
Let's do A, and we can do B separate.
All right,
That's
so
okay.
I
So
will
A
move
with all of the
A
inclusions.
with everything, yes.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Solda. Comments? Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. And Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that council amend the City of Port Alberni 2023-2027 Financial Plan Bylaw number 5075 to add into the 2023 capital plan 10th Avenue and Dunbar Street, 10th Avenue and Redford Street traffic improvements in the amount of $410,000 coming from the Capital Works Reserve.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Solda. Any comments on this one? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And Councillor Mealy.
Madam Mayor, thank you. I move that the City of Port Alberni 2023-2027 Financial Plan Bylaw number 5075 be read a second time as amended.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Solda. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you. And then the next item on our agenda is the financial plan Q&A. I don't think there's any specific highlighting that needs to happen today. Are there any questions or follow-ups from council? Okay, seeing none. Director of Finance, any comment you wanted to add?
No, Madam Mayor. I note that we didn't have the Committee of the Whole meeting populated in there quite yet, but we are working to get that for next meeting.
Thank you very much. Okay, so this is just included for information. So we'll move on to item number 3, Committee of the Whole meeting, March 6th, Financial Reserves and Development Cost Charges.
Oh, so Madam Mayor, thanks. So we brought forward a staff report at the Committee of the Whole, and that we made a recommendation to the committee to bring back a report and then possibly have the reserve structure at a regular council meeting to actually establish some reserves that were presented at the Committee of the Whole.
Thank you. So no further information on this other than the recommendations that Committee of the Whole passed to come forward in front of council. Are there any comments, or would anyone like to start moving those recommendations? Councillor Solda.
Madam Mayor, I'll move that the member of the committee recommend to council and that council direct staff to prepare a report regarding the establishment of reserves based on the proposed reserves outlined in the staff report titled Current and Proposed Financial Reserves and dated February 10th, 2023.
Thank you. So I think just noting that one is starting with basically that council direct staff. Just it was written a little confusing, but that's perfect. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Mealy. Any comments on this? Seeing none, on the motion, all in favor? Carried, thank you. And Councillor Solda.
And B, that members of the committee recommend to council that council direct staff to prepare a report regarding the increase of development cost charges.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Mealy. So again, that council direct staff to begin this work. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you. And we'll move on to item number 4, Committee of the Whole meeting, March 20th, 2023, softball fields and building community funding. Councillor Solda.
Madam Mayor, I'll move that the Committee of the Whole recommend council request a report on the feasibility of considering additional funding for softball field repair and maintenance in 2023-2027 financial plan.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Solda, seconded by Councillor Mealy. Any comments on this? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Carried. Thank you.
All right, and B, that building committee funding requests be brought forward with a letter and criteria as staff are aware of them.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Solda, seconded by Councillor Mealy. Any comments on this piece? Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do support the concept that we should review funding requests from the Building Community Funding Fund, but I think perhaps instead of doing them individually, we should be reviewing them against a standard or a plan or a strategic plan as to what we prioritize as those funds best being used for. So just the way the motion is worded, I wouldn't support it, but I would certainly support an overall review.
Thank you. Any other comments? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to staff reports. Item number 1, accounts. Councillor Solda.
Madam Mayor, I move that the certification of the Director of Finance dated March 27th, 2023 be received and checks numbered 152421 to 152501 inclusive in payment of accounts totaling $1,142,216.88 be approved.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Patola. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? And none opposed, carried. And quarterly reports. Our first one from Corporate Services. We do have the report in our agenda. Are there any questions from council or areas anyone would like to highlight? Okay. Oh, Councillor Solda.
Madam Mayor, I just want to say thank you for the quarterly reports. I think they look great, and I'm really glad for the information. Parks and Rec, I look at the people that are on the waiting list. It's amazing how many people we have, and if you look at, when you look at the Parks and Rec and you look at what programs are highlighted, and there's a waiting list for arts and different things. It tells us, can we bump them up? Can we add more? Are we short of staff for these programs? I think it's, I hear people during the spring break that there was no more room and they wanted to put their kids in. Is it a shortage of staffing that we have, or maybe Parks and Rec manager could talk about it? You know, I'd like to hear more information about that programs.
Yes, when we get to the Parks and Rec one, we'll ask that question. Before I move on from corporate services, does our Director of Corporate Services have anything that you'd like to highlight from the report?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Just briefly, we just want to highlight again the new public safety building. It seems so long ago, but we did have the grand opening in February, and we are excited with the uptake in the community and the frequent use of it now, and that's just continuing to build. Further to that, I do just want to draw your attention again to the report provided with our community policing volunteers. As part of that opening of that building, we've also seen some increases in recruitment, and that's it's very exciting for us.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll move on to finance and information technologies. Does our director have any items he'd like to highlight? Okay, wonderful. Any questions from council on that report specifically? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to Parks and Recreation. We'll probably just call our director up here for this one.
Yeah, what the heck?
So I know we have had one question already, and I'll just echo first Councillor Solda's comments on the reports generally. I think they've been really informative and great information for us to have. Director Thorpe, if you'd like to answer the question that has been provided, or any kind of information you're able to highlight around some of the challenges that are going on.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So through to Councillor Solda's question, yes, the short answer is any wait lists we have are based on challenges with meeting the supply, meeting the demand. So you'll notice on page 69 of your agenda, you can see the lesson wait list for swimming lessons is incredible. We would much prefer that that number be 0 and that we're able to meet the demand. The reality is that we just don't have the staff at this point to be able to meet that demand, both in our swimming lessons, and then also, as you noted on page 70, that there's a variety of waitlisted numbers there. And also, Madam Mayor, if council wouldn't mind, I'd love to touch base for a moment actually on sports fields, if I could. So just sort of to ensure that we're all on the same page, that we're currently preparing our ball diamonds for use. Wanted to make sure council's aware, though, as well, that the tricky part of our work is that the work at this stage in the spring is at the mercy of Mother Nature. And so we're in a situation where we want to complete all the necessary work as quickly as we can. The trouble is, if the ground is too soft because of all the rains in the fall and the winter, if we proceed with running equipment on the fields, then we run the risk of damaging them more than any good we could possibly do with preparing the fields. So we're here on March 27th working on fields. The crew is very well versed. We all know that baseball and softball starts in April. It's a very, very tight timeline to try to get Mother Nature on our side to dry out the fields enough that we can get on those fields and do constructive work. So just wanted to make sure council is aware of that. Also, as I've mentioned previously to council, that Port Alberni does not currently have a long-term plan for field refurbishment or maintenance. So we have 19 fields in our community. There's no existing plan of what we're doing in the long term. So that's what staff is in the process of developing currently. So the goal there is that everyone in community would know seasons in advance what work is happening when. So when folks say, well, just a minute, when can I count on this work happening on this field? The goal is that we could provide an overarching look for council to say, here's where it is in the plan, rather than this business of staff coming to council the same season that we're planning to get work done. That is not how we want to operate. So this is why staff is building that plan. And also a reminder that we have had a vacancy in our manager of parks position since early December. And so that's a key member of the staff team that is missing at this point. So that means that we get that report prepared as quickly as we can. That's one of the reasons why we've had an offset of time, is that we do have a current vacancy. So, and I'd be pleased to answer any questions council might have.
Thank you very much, Director Thorpe, for the information, and specifically for the information as it relates to the fields. We know it has been a topic of conversation in the community, and I think that's very much where, you know, we hope we'll be able to get to as well, obviously, is that bigger master plan. So it's always great to know that that's being worked on, and I think we can all appreciate some of the challenges that do exist with our weather and making sure the fields can be in their best shape possible. Other questions or comments from council? Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to Director Thorpe. I note that part of the difficulty and the creation of the waiting list in the pool swimming lessons is probably not enough instructors. And I note that we also don't have enough lifeguards. Do we have any trainers in our staff to provide the training for those instructors and lifeguards?
Madam Mayor, the short answer is yes. So part of the challenge as well is the demand by the prospective candidates. So many folks are looking for their children and grandchildren to learn to swim. We have some staff that are primed and ready, and the reality is having enough adults or folks, adolescents and adults that are prepared to become trained. So yes, we're able to offer a variety of those advanced courses by our internal staff. So it's not a case of where we need to send folks away to become trained. We can do much of that training in-house. The other challenge, again, is ensuring we have enough candidates so those programs will run. I've also outlined on page 70 of the staff report as well on the right-hand side. It just gives council a bit of a schematic there, as well as the community to understand, well, for heaven's sakes, why don't we have more staff? Let's go send folks away for a weekend training session. The reality is that's those 6 easy steps to become a lifeguard take a significant amount of time. So just to give folks some context as well, that in some lines of work, you're able to take a weekend course or a few night courses and be trained up. With something like becoming a national lifeguard, as you can see on the screen there, it's quite an involved process.
Thank you. Councillor Solda.
Just to ask a question on the, to become a lifeguard, is this done throughout the year, or is this just a couple of months? Like, and when do you offer the program? Because there are people that I know out there that would be interested, but not in the summer months, so.
Absolutely. So they are, COVID was difficult for us, of course. We had a variety of courses scheduled at that point that needed to be canceled. We do offer them throughout the year. Another aspect we've taken for the first time ever in Port Alberni is we've combined our spring and summer leisure guide. So if the community goes to playinpa.ca, they'll notice that all of the offerings for the spring and summer are actually all out now together. And so that helps drive registration as well, so that folks can see in advance, here's what's coming up for the whole spring and summer, rather than having to wait multiple months to see, well, I might be available in the summer. When is that information out? Actually, the first time in the organization's history, it's all out at the same time early now. So the short answer to that question is we do offer courses on an ongoing basis, and folks can find that information on the website as well.
Councillor Douglas.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor. I was just wondering, is this, through your colleagues in other communities, is this a issue of not having adequate staff or adequate numbers of staff particular to Alberni Valley, or are you seeing it in all other communities as well?
Madam Mayor, we're seeing it in all other communities. We had a recent discussion or interview with the media asking me the same question, and I'd indicate essentially that we've had this challenge. I've noticed it across many of the communities I've worked in for the past 10 or so years, and frankly, we've been sort of lucky in Port Alberni that this pinch point hasn't caught up to us until this point. Obviously, it's very frustrating. I don't mean to make excuses or to indicate that it's anything less than frustrating, because it is, because we want to have adequate staff. If I had it my way, every facility would be open 24/7, 365. The reality is that our workforce has also changed significantly. So when folks traditionally, so throughout the decades of my career, there would be many folks that would be interested in, everyone wants to work full-time, 40 hours a week, as many hours as they could. The reality is that's not the case anymore. And so as the needs of our staff change, our business model has to change as well. So yes, this challenge has happened for years and years, I would say over the past 5 to 10 years across Canada and British Columbia as well. And so now I realize that Port Alberni, we're just seeing it in recent years. The reality is when you go to many, many other communities, they sort of look at us a little bit puzzled, saying this has been an issue for them for a long time.
Thank you for that. One kind of final comment for me, especially with the oversubscription of our programs, a suggestion that was made to me recently, because the city of Port Alberni taxpayers do cover the vast majority of recreation costs through taxation, was the suggestion that there be kind of a deferred registration for non-city resident people. And I thought that was a really interesting suggestion, because if you live in the city of Port Alberni, you do pay a significantly amount more than if you live out Beaver Creek. If there is a limit of how many people we can get into our programs, then we really do want to probably consider looking at city taxpayers having an option first. So I know we're kind of into the spring and summer, and not necessarily the right path for us, but I thought it was definitely something worth consideration. In the community that I heard from, they have a similar recreation model, though I think we do note that our recreation model is outdated and not common, where city taxpayers pay the vast majority in most areas. However, this was a similar community structure, and city taxpayers got basically 2 weeks to register for programs, and then anything remaining and wait lists were open up to regional area taxpayers. So it did really just give that preference to the people who are already paying the vast majority of the service. So just thought that was an interesting concept and something that we might want to give consideration to in the future. And I think that's all for me. Anyone else have comments? Okay, seeing none. Sorry, Councillor Dame.
Sorry, thank you, Madam Mayor. Is that something that we want? I hesitate to ask for a report at this time. I know there's a lot of reports out there right now, but is this something other councillors would like to pursue?
I think it might even just be worth leaving it with Director Thorpe for the time being, and for staff to kind of think about if it is something that's worth pursuing. I'm sure there's downsides as well. We're also, of course, in a process with the Aquatic Centre, with the regional district, that could shift our whole model of recreation funding. And if that was the case, then I think that initiative would become irrelevant if that is successful in moving forward as a regional project. If it's not, I think we may want to come back at that point with looking at that as an option. So maybe we just leave it for now. If council wants to give any direction to it in the future, we could certainly do that, but just sort of threw it out for information at this point. Okay, thank you. Councillor Douglas.
Yeah, I really appreciate you bringing that up, Madam Mayor and Councillor Dame, is what these points do really is they open up the discussion potential. And I'm like an avid user of our aquatic facility, and I discuss this with a lot of the users in there, a lot of whom are from the regional district. And the vast majority of them seem to want to address the issue. So it's really nice just bringing this up so that more people in the community become aware of the discrepancy between the cost sharing that the city bears the brunt of compared to the rest of the regional district. So thanks very much for bringing it up.
Thank you. Okay, with that, would somebody like to move receipt of our quarterly reports?
So moved, Madam Mayor.
Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Dame. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, thank you. And we'll move on to bylaws. Item number 1, we have an OCP and zoning bylaw amendments for 2601 Bird Street. We'll have our Director of Development Services.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. So our planner 2 is currently on vacation, so I'm going to help our way through on this one. So this is an amendment to the OCP and zoning bylaw application at 2601 Bird Street, and it's kind of on the far eastern of Upper Bird. Currently, the OCP is designated as future residential, and the proposed is to go to a residential use, and the current zone is future development, and the proposed zone is for a semi-rural residential development, and this would be to enable a potential subdivision from 1 parcel to 5 parcels. There's currently an existing single-family home right on the corner of Bird Street and Dundalk, and then 4 additional, if successful, 4 additional parcels could be created along Dundalk Avenue. This property is frontage onto Bird Street, but does have a fair bit of frontage onto Dundalk Avenue, which is currently partially paved, and it's not a full street right-of-way, but it is a full legal road. Adjacent, this is right on the city boundary between the city and the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District, and the OCP area for the Cherry Creek area is Woodlot. And this general area is a mix of kind of rural, semi-rural residential area. There's currently no city sanitary sewer in this general area, but there is full municipal water. Again, there isn't sewer up in this area currently for urban density, but this area is what is being proposed is a semi-rural residential of half-acre parcels. It is going to be it is recommended by staff, if this moves forward, that a 219 restrictive covenant be put on title of these parcels if they're created, to require that they be connected to a sanitary sewer system if it's provided or built in the future. Again, the semi-rural residential zone is low density, is compatible with the existing surrounding area. As I mentioned before, the proposed lots would be approximately half-acre parcels. There will be improvements to infrastructure that will be required as part of a subdivision development proposal. The applicant will be responsible for those costs. They currently are proposing on-site septic systems that will be required to be proven out during the subdivision process. And as I mentioned, a restrictive covenant to ensure connection to a municipal sanitary sewer system in the future when built would be a condition of subdivision. The city's advisory planning commission did consider this application and did support it. It has also been reviewed by our development review committee that involves various departments, including engineering, parks and recreation, and others. As this is an amendment to the official community plan, a pre-public hearing consultation was done. And given the large parcel size, there was engagement letters sent out to quite a large area, so about 750 meters. So that included 74 letters that went out to the general areas. We did have one communication that did have some concern about the changes and what infrastructure changes might be needed. And we did provide replies to them on this as part of the process. They would have another opportunity to comment to council during a public hearing if this moved forward, and that the applicant would be responsible for any new infrastructure if subdivision was to approve. So before council is the next step would be to provide first and second reading for the OCP and zoning amendments and set a public hearing date. Council certainly can say decline to give this first reading or provide alternative direction. Staff are recommending that council consider first and second reading for both the OCP and zoning bylaw, and that this be advanced to a public hearing on Monday, April 24th at 6 p.m. And I'd be pleased to answer any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Douglas.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. It was just a question about, I know we've been slowly advancing our sewer up along Bird. How far up are we to date, and how close to the end are we?
So the sanitary sewer on Bird Street is basically at the Uplands 2 redevelopment, so it's not gone beyond that. And this is at the far eastern side of the boundary, so it is a good kilometer away.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Mealy?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll just make a motion that the official community plan amendment number 2601 Bird Street, ERG, bylaw number 5070 be now introduced and read a first time.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Douglas. Any comments? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the zoning map amendment number 2601 Bird Street, ERG, bylaw number 5071 be now introduced and read a first time.
Seconded by Councillor Solda. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the official community plan amendment number 2601 Bird Street, ERG, bylaw number 5070 be read a second time.
Seconded by Councillor Douglas. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the zoning map amendment number 2601 Bird Street, ERG, bylaw number 5071 be now read a second time.
Seconded by Councillor Solda. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the amending bylaws be advanced to a public hearing on Monday, April 24th, 2023 at 6 p.m.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Solda. On the motion, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Okay, and correspondence for action. We have one piece today. We have a letter dated February 16th, 2023 from the BC Farmers Markets reporting the results of the 2022 BC Farmers Market Nutrition Coupon Program and requesting that the City of Port Alberni send a thank you letter to Minister Dix. Okay, Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think I have a conflict on this because of the organizations referenced in the letter and would ask to be excused at this moment.
Thank you. Councillor Solda.
I guess he doesn't have to really go far. I think this is great. This program has been with the city for a while, and it's a fantastic program. So I'll move that the council directs staff to prepare a letter of thanks to the Honourable Adrian Dix, Minister of Health, in support of the BC Farmers Market Nutrition Coupon Program.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Dame. Any comments? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you. We'll get Councillor Patola back. Thank you. And we'll move on to proclamations. And we have an email dated March 13th, 2023, requesting that the month of May 2023 be proclaimed as Guillain-Barré syndrome and chronic inflammatory CIDP awareness month in Port Alberni. Would somebody like to move that proclamation? Moved by Councillor Dame. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Mealy. On the motion, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. And correspondence for information will go to our Director of Corporate Services to highlight.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So first off, we have a letter from the UBCM just providing a response to council regarding resolution for safe and clean affordable housing. Mostly just referring council back to other similar resolutions. And then we received CMB Yao sent regarding Rex Road, City Boulevard, and trees, depositing seeds and creating additional cleanup. We received correspondence from O Brown regarding Echo Pool closures, and D is Bister as well. Same thing around concerns about the cutting of the hours. We received correspondence from the Alberni Valley Ringette Association regarding ice time bookings and asking council consideration on looking at how ice times are booked and whether they could kind of open up bookings to all groups at the same time instead of setting preference to certain hockey clubs. Then we have Ministry of Forests, spongy moth eradication pesticide use permit was issued. So this is just notice about that, and that aerial spraying will be occurring. Further follow-up will be sent to those that are directly affected. UBCM provided strategic priorities fund application for integrated asset management and GIS strategy. as well as Strategic Priorities Fund for Sustainable Environmental Infrastructure Upgrade. Both of those projects, we received letters saying we did not receive funding from our applications. We received a number of correspondence from our Brandon, D. Piatka, DNL Brown, and M. Forcier regarding Fall Street hedge enforcement complaints. And lastly, we have Mosaic Forest Management watershed fact sheets attached in addition then to the 2 pieces of correspondence. The petition that was spoken to earlier, as well as from Mobius Books, we have the introduction of paid parking in all commercial zones that has been distributed.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there items councillors would like to highlight? Okay, Councillor Dane.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I feel like just given the number of emails we received regarding the hedges, perhaps some sort of response is warranted. I'm not sure if that would be directed to CAO or.
Thank you. I'll go to our CAO for a bit of an update on this issue, and then I do have a motion to propose as well.
Thank you. I believe that with the number of concerns that there is a need to review the bylaws and also just look at the whole issue. And I believe we should be looking at a more fulsome review and also get the intent of how council would like bylaws enforced in the community. But again, this would take time, and so currently I'll leave it up to council to give direction to administration if there is any actions that would like to be taken on this matter.
Thank you. Councillor Solda, did you have your hand up on this?
Not on this.
Okay. So I know myself as well as several members of council did receive reach outs from members of the public with regard to some of the notices that were issued on fence and hedge heights. Given that we have had a previous request, actually a couple meetings ago as well, to have kind of look at that bylaw and just the number of notices that were given out. I do have a motion that I will read if someone would like to second. So that council resolves to temporarily defer strict enforcement of provision 6.7.3 and 6.7.4 of zoning bylaw 4832. So 6.7.3 is fences, hedges, and walls not greater than 4.1 feet in height are permitted in the front yard, and 6.7.4 is fences, hedges, and walls not greater than 6 feet in height are permitted from the rear of the property to the front yard setback. So to defer until a report is brought to council at the May 15th Committee of the Whole to outline alternatives for the committee's consideration and referral to council. And further, that council resolve to hold in abeyance any further enforcement action on notices issued during the week of March 13, 2023 for violations of provision 6.7.3 and 6.7.4 of zoning bylaw 4832 until after such a time council has had the opportunity to review the recommendations of the Committee of the Whole on this matter. Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Mealy. Would anyone like to speak to this? Okay, so it gives the opportunity for us to just pause, not take any further enforcement action, and have the opportunity to look at if changes need to be made. So that is moved and seconded on the motion. All in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Thank you. Okay. Getting back to the correspondence for information, I did just want to highlight additionally item A, the response to council resolution for safe and clean affordable housing. This resolution was put forward by the City of Port Alberni to AVICC and then UBCM at last year's UBCM, I believe. Yes. And it was passed, I think, unanimously at UBCM, and I was quite disappointed by the response that we received back, which basically says we're working on it. I always feel we have a great partner in the province, but on this issue, we were specifically asking the province to support where there are situations like the 4th Avenue illegal trailer park, and where there are much too many housing assistance payments going to that landlord who is not in return providing safe, clean, and adequate housing. So we were asking the province to basically step in and ensure that where they are funding, that there be pressure put on the landlord to ensure that the housing being provided is adequate, or that they work with the landlord to bring it up to a standard. And we didn't receive really anything back that even really, I think, recognizes the issue. So I think it's worth a follow-up with our MLA, who I know is very aware of that specific issue, and I know that we are moving forward, through our own resources, additionally, and hopefully successfully in the very near future on that piece of property. But just generally, I think there are a few examples of properties in our community where I would like to see the province take a stronger step before just funding. So where they are funding people to live in specific places, it would be nice if they did ensure that those people were had access to clean drinking water as one specific minimum. Thank you, Councillor Haggard.
Thank you for bringing that up, Madam Mayor. I was also going to talk about this. Well, they gave some alternatives for people to go to and groups. So we have to remember there are some citizens in our community that don't have access to computers, they don't have access to telephone, they may not have easy access to transportation. So it's very difficult for a lot of people, not just in our community, but many communities, to access information even, or to go to these resources. So I was absolutely very disappointed in the response. So I think we do need to follow up.
Yeah, and while we did reference this one specific property, just because of this was driven following the remedial action report that we had on that property, so we had a lot of information regarding it. It was noted that there were several others in our community that did not meet those minimum standards. So just looking for additional resources where the municipality is already stepping up and taking action, additional support from the province. So a further conversation for sure. Any other items from council? Councillor Solda.
Madam Mayor, the item B, Rex Road, City Boulevard, there'll be a follow-up. It'll be forwarded to engineering. Is that where it's going to go, or will there be a follow-up? Just to check.
CAO.
Through the chair, on Rex Road, this is, I'm sorry, I'm just, okay, yeah. This is sorry, the trees, so yes. If you would like us, yeah, we can follow up on that.
So it has been CC'd already to engineering, Parks and Rec, corporate services, and included on our agenda.
And also, Madam Mayor, a follow-up on the ice time bookings, just to let the person know how it's all done, and there's questions there that should be answered, and I think there should be a follow-up on that one.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Through the chair, I just also would like to add is when we are CC'd on a email or a letter, we will follow up as an administration and then further it on to council.
And that's fair enough, just as long as the person is contacted and let them know what's going on. That's what I care about. Thank you.
Thank you. And on the late item, or one of the late items, the petition specifically, because we did receive a bit of a package here that included the petition, but also, I believe, included the response from our CAO. I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind highlighting a little bit of the information for members of the public, but also for members of council, because this is late. So we only got it before our first meeting today, and I haven't actually been able to read it yet for that reason. But also because I noted that earlier today, a comment was made that we're not aware of, I think, overland water issues, and that we had asked the residents if there were issues that we be made aware of them. So it sounds like a bit of possibly an ongoing conversation. But I just wanted to give you an opportunity to highlight some of the response so that people have the information.
Sure, thank you for that. And through the chair, I think it's important that operations does follow up with this item. where it has been deferred out of our capital and to a further date. And we don't know when that will be until we understand the full asset management plan for the city as we approach renewing streets, looking at water, sewer, storm, and the streetscape as well. So I did respond, letting the resident know about this, and that our operations staff will be meeting up on site to look at possible mitigations to some of the safety concerns and other items. Groundwater, as I heard today, is another issue. That is a bigger conversation, especially if it comes from high up on the mountains. It's a little harder to get into that without further investigation. So I'm sure with those comments, we'll follow up on that as well and see if there's anything to be done on this street and other streets that may be affected from that groundwater.
Okay, thank you very much. Any follow-up questions from council? Councillor Haggart.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to really thank the owner of Mobius Books for writing in a suggestion for paid parking. I always really like it when community members trying to come up with solutions for issues. He said because Tofino does have paid parking, he suggested that Port Alberni put in paid parking as a possible revenue stream. But if I do remember correctly, Tofino put in paid parking for beaches and parks and also to capitalize on the tourists who come to their community in the summer. So it's not just for residents, they're really trying to get some additional funding from tourists, but also to prevent overnight and parking, which was happening a lot. It was a real issue there. So I don't think the community's quite there yet for paid parking, but as we do develop the waterfront properties, it may be something that we might want to look in the future. So I think maybe if we just tuck this in the back of our minds for a possible later date. But I really just want to thank him for reaching out with the idea.
Thank you. Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to comment on that as well. I mean, I think the solution at this point is just enforcement and making sure we can go around and if there are people parking there for extended periods of time in front of businesses, to have them at least move around a bit. I'd also like to hear from those in the council who have businesses in the uptown area. That'd be great to hear from some experience.
Thank you. Councillor Dame.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, so I do think that this is going to become an increasing problem as time goes on. I'm not sure it's an immediate priority, but I do think that it's time for us to start having this conversation and thinking about how we're going to mitigate parking issues in the uptown area. A little bit of background would be nice. Just I know that we used to enforce time-limited stalls. That's not something that we've done for pre-COVID, I believe. Yeah, is there anybody in the room who happens to know why?
I'll ask our CEO to comment on that.
Thank you, and through the chair, enforcement has started again, mostly with reminders to residents that enforcement is now in effect. However, we are taking an approach where we aren't trying to use a hard stick before the carrot, where we haven't enforced this in a while, so we are reminding residents. And we are doing it only in the real problematic areas of town right now. So, you know, we are providing people with notices that, yes, we are enforcing now. Next time, if you are in this location and you aren't heeding the time, we will be fining. And we do take pictures of the valve stem, which is a common practice in several locations.
Thank you. Yeah, I think this is an interesting one, and I appreciate the business owner writing in. And it's interesting, I think, because our community is really shifting. So I remember a parking conversation when I was on council, so maybe 5 years ago, where Third Avenue business owners were concerned about some other Third Avenue business owners letting their staff park in spaces in front of their businesses. And so basically the suggestion at that point was, tell all your staff to park on like Argyle and Second block because there's no businesses there. So, you know, fast forward a few years and now we have businesses on the Argyle and Second to Third block. And so, you know, now we have a letter from a business owner on Argyle and Second. And I think to myself, well, my staff park, you know, down from his business, but they park across the street so that it's kind of, you know, out of the way and, but in that area. And so our community is really shifting. And I think, you know, now the solution is probably everybody, including the 3 of our businesses that are there, to park on Second. one side of Second where there's maybe a bit of space. But I think we have to be able to react to this reasonably quickly to decide where are we going to have time limits and where is appropriate staff parking. And I know that when Third Avenue businesses were coming forward on a pretty regular basis for a couple of years, several years ago, the suggestion that the city provided before everyone kind of said Second and Argyle, was the parking lots in behind. And there was definitely a concern about safety for sending your staff to be in those areas. So, you know, there might be lighting improvements or that type of thing that the city could work on. But I think technically the areas where, you know, we were at one point telling Third Avenue businesses to send their parking or their staff to park on Argyle are time limited also. So I think we might want to do some kind of review so that we can have timed parking in some areas and no timed parking in some areas, because businesses need to have somewhere for their staff to park. We just don't want it to impact anyone else's businesses. So I'm not sure if we want to start that work now, if it is enough of a priority. I also think that there's, you know, in each kind of little business area, Uptown Third Avenue seems to have worked it out for the most part. I think Argyle, Second to Third, can work it out with business owners for the most part and come to some kind of agreement. But the next parking area may just fill up in the next few years as well. And then the problem just shifts. And it also might be another area that is time limited. I don't know that kind of off the top of my mind. So it's interesting to see how the conversation has evolved. And I think that's a good thing because our different areas that were once vacant are now filling. Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think this is something that we should start considering, and possibly in our discussions of our strategic plans that it is ongoing, we could make this identify this as a task that we need to get to sooner rather than later. The greater danger here is not so much parking, but is the concept of saying we can solve a problem by moving it. And so while I'm sure everyone in the world is familiar with the term "not in my backyard," I think it's as equally offensive to say, yes, in your backyard, we'll just put the problem somewhere else. And so as you've identified, Madam Mayor, moving the problem from one area to another is just now meant that the problem is in another area. I think moving it again doesn't solve the problem, but a intelligent, cohesive, informed approach to parking in the community all throughout the city would be a good objective to persevere.
Well, I just think it's so fantastic every time I have to walk 2 blocks to get to my business. And that is something that didn't happen a few years ago. That is the area where we are shifting people, and now it is filled with people going to the bookstore and going to the bakery, and yeah, it's great to see. Councillor Douglas.
Thank you. Yeah, and I echo that. It's a good sign. People are coming uptown, people are coming to businesses, businesses are starting to thrive more. But I think this, coupled with the focus that we've had on the hedges events over the last week, brings us to a place where we really need to start looking at our bylaw approaches. And do we want to be going down the road of being an enforcement sort of policing agency, or do we want to be going to a community where we're solution-based and trying to find solutions to make it a community where everybody is managing things together. So there's a lot of other avenues to this. You know, do we have a good transit system? Do we have a good safe biking system? Are we pedestrian friendly, or do we want to put a freeway down the middle of the community like they do in, other communities back in the 50s and 60s in the States? So there's a lot of elements here. So I'd say what this does, in addition to the immediate things we need to pay attention to, is put the focus on our bylaws department and the concept, and where do we want to go? Do we want to be solution-based, or do we want to be enforcement-based? So thanks for bringing that up.
Thank you very much. Okay. So I think, I do know that we have some work coming forward on strategy and bylaws, so I think we can leave that piece of it for now. If council wants to consider directing some kind of parking review be done, that doesn't need to be done at today's meeting, could be brought to a future meeting, but just appreciate that coming forward. Any other items from correspondence? Okay, seeing none, would somebody like to move or seat? Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Douglas. On the motion, all in favor? Carried. Move on to report from in camera. And so this is just for information that council has released from in camera a rail trail agreement that has been signed. And then council has released from in camera some information around leases of the Harbor Quay. Those are included in our agenda for public information. Oh, and a third one there. Council has released from in camera the 2023 to 2027 5-year financial plan, bylaw number 5075. And this was just a decision to include $35,000 in the 2023 budget for the purpose of implementing structural recommendations structural recommendations following the City Hall Violence Risk Assessment final report and consider including additional budget items in future years. Okay, and council and regional district reports. Are there any items that councillors would like to highlight? Seeing none, we'll move on to new business. Item number 1, we have the ALR non-farm use permit on ALR land request from Sashot First Nation. Marianne.
Good afternoon. I'll just wait for this to... There, perfect. Good afternoon. So the purpose of today's report is that the Agricultural Land Commission has requested a resolution and comments from council on the Sashot First Nations application for a non-farm use permit on the Agricultural Land Reserve designation for the subject property. And the non-farm use permit application is to allow for the development of a 50 to 100 site low impact campground in addition to agriculture ventures. So before you is their proposed plan. The land that's within the city of Port Alberni is highlighted in yellow, and the other lands are in the ACRD. And there's 4 parcels of land that make up this proposal, and the parcel of land that we're considering today is the one within the city of Port Alberni, which has the campground on it, the economic garden, and the other local partners, and a little bit of the research and university garden area. So a little bit of background, the subject property is designated ALR. We don't have very many of these in the city. This is one of them. And it is also surrounded by a land use of rural and agriculture. It's got split land use designation. So we've got urban agriculture and parks and open space. We've got split zoning. We've got agriculture, and we've got parks and rec and utility. And the utility basically goes over the infrastructure that is there already, servicing our lagoons. And there's no sewer or municipal water to service this property. Official community plan, there's no development permit required. The policy does encourage the agricultural uses that are being proposed in this area. The policy also emphasizes the protection of the environmental lands, which you'll see in green is along the river, and that will involve in the future federal and provincial environmental agencies. So that aligns. Agriculture and recreation development is encouraged in flood susceptible lands, which this area is, so this aligns as well. And there's a policy that commits to exploring economic development initiatives with the Sashot First Nation, which this proposal does. Regarding the zoning, the commercial campground is not a permitted use in any of the property's zoning, so a zoning bylaw amendment would be required. It could be a text amendment to the existing agriculture zone. Currently, we do not permit campgrounds in anything except for C4 and C8, so definitely something to look at, and I've consulted with our Director of Parks and Recreation along this nature as well. So there's concurrence within staff about looking at that moving forward as well. The shoreline, again, is P2, which is our parks, which also deals with natural areas. So again, there's some alignment there with the zoning. And then the M4 zoning delineates our current existing city infrastructure. We will need to consider some access on the northern part of the property, which is an informal road now, and there's a more formalized one in the ACRD, so that is a point of consideration as well. I briefly touched on about the informal road to the north. We do have the forced sewer main, which is located and secured by easements. We've got rights of ways for infrastructure. And also that the proposed campground would have a split fire protection jurisdiction between Sprout Lake and protection area and Port Alberni's fire department. So some details to work out there as we move forward, should this be approved by the Agricultural Land Commission. Again, you can see that purple line up there, that's the informal road that we will need to secure an easement on. And the communications, the ACRD has already passed a resolution to support the non-farm use permit. And we've taken this to our development review committee in support by staff. So we've had fire, engineering, planning, all look at this. So everybody's in support. And so staff is recommending that council support the non-farm use application, and that we also inform the agricultural land use that a zoning official plan, community plan may be required, and that we secure an easement for the city to access the utilities. And council has the option not to proceed with this if they so choose. And I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Okay, I've got first a question from Councillor Solda and then Councillor Haggard.
I tried to Google Earth this to find out where it's located. So is it on, like I can't find it. So where is it in relation to the tea shop?
This is Tashot-owned land that is outside of the reserve. And if you look where the purple line goes, you will go into the Tashot Reserve and the administration office, and then you would go over the Orange Bridge. So this is, and then our lagoons are on the south side of this, and Ducks Unlimited, and our access over that way to the lagoons.
Thank you. Councillor Haggard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It may be too early for this. I'm not sure if you know the answer or not, but you know if this will be short-term camping? Restricted to
Yes,
short-term?
yeah,
Great,
yeah.
thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a question, maybe just for clarification for the public. So this will trigger a zoning amendment public hearing? Or?
Yes, it would, yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Dane, would you like to read the motions that are written?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was about to offer. So I move that council support the Sashat First Nations application for non-farm uses for the proposed campground and forward the application to the Agricultural Land Commission, noting that the campground use would be low impact and that the land is within Sashat territory.
Thank you. Moved and seconded, seconded by Councillor Solda. Any final comments on that piece? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Carried. Thank you.
And I would also move that council inform the Agricultural Land Commission that an application for a zoning and official community plan amendment may be required if the ALC approves the non-farm use, along with an easement for the city to access utilities.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Dame, seconded by Councillor Solda. Any comments on this piece? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thank you to our Manager of Planning, and we'll move on to item number 2, temporary expanded service area. Again, from the Manager of Planning.
Thank you very much. So this report is before you. As council may remember that under COVID, there was the temporary expanded service areas, TESAs, and the Liquor Control Board has issued a bulletin to extend these now past March 31st, 2023 to December 31st, 2024. So we're before you today to seek a resolution by council to extend the TESAs to align with the LCRB's bulletin just released. This will affect some of the properties that we're working on currently to try to get permanent licensing in place. So the purpose of this is to allow some time for us to come forward with a bylaw in regards to patios and that are on sidewalks and also on city streets. Currently, we do not have such a bylaw, and so staff has been working on that to bring it forward. And the things that we are considering, we've been looking at some other municipalities, And there's some costs that are associated with doing these sorts of license of occupations and staff time, and also some obligations with the LCRB that we have to do from advertising. So we quickly ran through and the items that we do not have. One is we do not have fees set out. And somebody like the City of Victoria, they do it by square footage, and it depends where it is, downtown or outside. Some other cities like Revelstoke did it by tables or by chair count. Staff is just recommending for the purpose of today, just a flat rate, which will cover our time as far as fire inspection, building inspection, and also dealing with review with occupancy loads, et cetera. So that covers the staff time to review and process this. As we move forward with the permanent applications, we will look more at what those fees are, because we will have to actually advertise and do notification, which requires putting it in the paper for two of the paper runs, and that will have costs, so we have to work out those costs. We also need to look at a LCRB or a liquor bylaw as well, because we do not have one, so that we can actually integrate the LCRB process within our process and have an application fee so that we can process those, because there is costs as far as advertising, public notice, et cetera. So that's all coming, and I've highlighted that in the report. So for today, we're simply asking for direction to extend the TESA from align with the bulletin, and that we ask for delegation to the Director of Corporate Services so we can reissue the license of occupations, because they expire at the end of this month, and we want to make sure that we can get those renewed for those business owners. And we are recommending a $300 just to go into the license of occupation to cover our costs. And that also council directs staff to prepare a bylaw to permit encroachment on city streets and sidewalks for the purposes of operating a patio. I can answer any questions.
Okay, thank you very much for the report. Would anyone like to read the motions or ask questions? Councillor Patola.
Sorry, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I did have one question. It's just with regards to item C, the $300 fee. I understand that's just to recover our costs, but I note that this expansion or extension of the temporary service area is for 1 3/4 years. So is that people pay $300 and then get to use city space for their patio for almost 2 years? Is that correct?
That is, but we're hoping in that period of time that we'll be getting the permanent license, because one business owner in particular has applied to LCRB for a permanent liquor license. So, and that's the whole point of the extension of the TESA. So then that would be a new agreement. And what we would be looking at in the report is it's an annual, because that's what most municipalities do, is they annually renew the patios. And that's what we're looking forward to bring forward in the bylaw.
Okay, thank you. Other questions, or if anyone would like to read the motions? Councillor Mealy.
I will move the first one, Madam Mayor, that council extend the temporary expanded service area from March 31st, 2023 to December 31st, 2024 to align with Bulletin 23-01, which replaces Policy Directive 22-05.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Solda. Not seeing any comments on the motion. All in favor? Carried. All in favor?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the Director of Corporate Services be delegated to execute the license of occupation for the temporary expanded service area on city-owned lands.
Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Solda. Any comments? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed.
I move, Madam Mayor, that the council authorize a fee of $300 for the patio use of city-owned lands for the temporary expanded service area.
Seconded by Councillor Solda. Any comments? Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just really can't see how $300 for 1 3/4 years of occupation is appropriate. Certainly, other municipalities that have calculated it by square footage or by table size, it's a simple enough formula, and I think that we could certainly, while this process unfolds and we move to a permanent process, which I fully support, I think we could be charging appropriate fees as we do for every other piece of property that the city owns and leases out.
Thank you. And I just want to note that I see this more as an application fee than a fee for use. I think right now we don't have a fee for use set out yet, but $300 would be kind of standard for an application type fee. But I think that's a great point, and I think we all want to move toward a permanent option where there would be, I mean, the city of Nelson has a great sidewalk patio bylaw as an example that we've talked about before. I think we all want to move toward that, where anyone using city-owned lands will be charged appropriately, where we determine what that appropriate fee is and how we're going to calculate it. And what I'm hearing from our manager of planning is that that can be done within this year and 3 quarters. And if we get to that point, we would then, for any permanent patio we sign agreement with, we would begin charging, if the bylaw said that.
Yeah, yes, Madam Mayor. The idea is that we're doing our research to bring that forward because we do agree that there should be an appropriate fee charged for the use of city property in line with other municipalities, be it a square footage. These tests were done for $1. So we're making just a recommendation, like it's an application fee. Staff has to review this. And the intent is that with these permanent applications, which we know are in with the LCRB, that we come forward with this bylaw to have that discussion with council.
Thank you. So I see this, and if it's structured as an application fee, then it doesn't preclude us from, once our permanent program is in place, signing agreements where occupants would be charged for use. Okay, thank you. Councillor Douglas, did you have a comment, or were you pre-voting?
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, actually, it's a good little topic again. Like, I'm not even sure I agree with the idea of charging for sidewalks. We want our sidewalks to come alive with people and businesses, and go to New York City, and it's just a thrill to walk down the sidewalk and see all the other merchants out there. So I agree with the concept, what Councillor Patola is talking about, but I think it's a bit of a conversation we should have again about what direction do we want our community to go in. But for the time being, I'm very content with the approach of it being, how did you describe it, Madam Mayor? An application fee for the time being, and then see where we take it from there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Douglas. Okay, seeing no further comments, motion is moved and seconded. On the motion, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. And the last one, if Councillor...
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the council direct staff to prepare a bylaw to permit encroachment on city streets and sidewalks for the purpose of operating a patio.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Solda. Seeing no final comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you. Thank you to the Manager of Planning, and we'll move on to a report dated March 20th, 2023 from the Director of Corporate Services for Shaw Cable Systems Municipal Access Agreement.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a brief overview. This is really just a general access agreement for the city entirely, for Shaw to be able to access some of their equipment through our right-of-ways just to do their regular maintenance and installation. This is one of those items that we can look with the delegation bylaw to regularly delegate to staff to deal with, but for now, it does come before council, and like I said, it's a very standard agreement that Shaw has in place with every municipality that they operate within.
Thank you. Councillor Dame.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would like to move that council authorize the mayor and corporate officer to execute a municipal access agreement between Shaw and the city of Port Alberni.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Mealy. Any comments on this? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you. Move on now to question period. This is an opportunity for members of the public to ask questions of council. Would anyone like to ask questions today? Okay, come on forward.
Randy Fraser, Oxford Street, Port Alberni. My first question is, in this big list of amendments to the bylaw, I'm just curious, there's just so much material in there and so many things, and it's housekeeping, tidying up, redirecting, or canceling projects. It's like, this is at the end of the budget season. How come it's just now at the very end? Shouldn't this have been done at the beginning?
CAO?
Thank you for the question, and through the chair, I think I'll have to defer this to the Director of Finance.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, so when we were looking at the items in the financial plan, it was, works in progress that we have talked about throughout the past few years. Some have no action on them, so it was just the recommendation that was brought forward. By all means, council can redirect staff to not amend, but with this, it was just identified through our year-end processes and just cleaning up our work in progress.
Thank you.
I'm not saying it shouldn't have been done, I'm just, because the budget process has been so short this year, you throw this whole, some of these jobs have been there for a long time. It was just funny that it's all of a sudden at the end of the process, now we have all this housekeeping going on. That's just my comment. And unfortunately, like 6th Avenue, yeah, that one's been on the book since 2018, and unfortunately, you're gonna have some upset people who thought they were getting their street paved, and now they're not.
Thank you, Mr. Fraser. Do you have a question? This is
sorry.
question period.
Sorry, yeah. I was going to talk about 6th Avenue, but I won't. In the water meter part of it, you're redirecting some money, $300,000 in capital funds. It says to complete works in the cap. Will that mean the water meter program will be completed this year?
CEO.
Thank you for the question, and through the chair, there will be a fulsome report coming forward, I believe, at the next council meeting. It's either the council meeting or the committee of the whole, where there will be a report from engineering coming forward with the program outlines, and it has dates included and the financial implications to the city.
Thank you very much.
Only 2 more questions. In the 10th Avenue, you reallocated $410,000 for the 10th Avenue intersections. Those were already sent out for tender. So is this additional money, or was this the original budget for it?
CEO.
Thank you for the question, and through the chair, I think I'll have to defer this to the Director of Finance.
Madam Mayor, so in the plan in 2021, there was network survey work done that was separate from this. So this was additional work, and it wasn't in the financial plan, and that's why we asked for that amendment to add it in.
Okay,
And if I remember correctly, council gave direction to add it into the plan last year. So there was already direction given for this project, which is why it's gone to tender.
Right, I know that it's already been out and tendered, right? So I think maybe the cost came in back high. I'm not sure why it was amended, so that was all I was just asking. And lastly, I don't see any banners on here for this year. Is there no banners going to be put up this year from the city?
Since you brought that forward, I think a week ago, council has not given any direction
I can see that.
or received information to make changes to the budget for banners for this year.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think we had another hand up here.
Hi, I've already given my name once, so I'll just give it against Joseph. And is it okay to ask a question regarding the temporary expanded service area, even though it's kind of been voted on already? Okay. Just a question on that, because it's expanded out onto sidewalks and that sort of thing. During COVID, that was utilized by a number of businesses. And my concern is when is there going to be a requirement to make sure that it's still usable for people that are walking? I walk a fair bit, and there was one that was being utilized as patio and space because of COVID. I'm fairly mobile, and so far that can change any day actually for all of us. And my concern, I had difficulty maneuvering around some of that as an able-bodied person. Now, a person in a wheelchair or a scooter, a walker, or even somebody pushing a baby stroller, whatever, would have a difficult time, almost impassable for those. So my concern when you're looking at this, can it make sure that it's still passable for those that are using the sidewalk as a sidewalk to get from one place to the next and stay safe?
Thank you. See you.
Thank you for the question, and through the chair, I believe the safety of all residents is paramount in the city, and that, of course, we will make sure that there is a passable space around any patio structure or in event even through it. So if you come across anything that I would recommend that you contact administration if you see that.
Thank you, and I'll just add to that, that I think this is exactly the reason why we want to put that permanent policy in place. While some of the temporary expanded service areas were put in place during COVID as a way to allow businesses to stay open who didn't maybe have adequate interior space, they may not be, you know, what ends up meeting the permanent policy. So that permanent policy will give us an opportunity to really make sure that everyone does fit the standards that we want to see in the community. Thank you. Any other questions for question period? Okay, then would somebody like to move adjournment? Moved by Councillor Douglas, seconded by Councillor Mealy. On the motion, all in favor? Carried, thank you.